I just had an awful reputation that I don't know of any other cure for it except the way it was. It would have got worse and worse. Of course, it was a black eye on the whole family, I know that. And there's another thing, you can't outlive it once you've done something like that. There's no way you can outlive it.
Hi, Peppa.
Hi.
And he just really made our lives so good. Showed us a lot of love, always nothing but love and acceptance, even when we made mistakes. And maybe that's because he knew what it was like to make a big mistake and be able to overcome it and not just be judged by that.
I ain't a doubt in my mind about I wouldn't be living today if I'd have stayed around here. I would have probably drunk myself to death and nothing else. So many other ways that I wouldn't have been here.
I have been a moonshiner ever since that I've been born. I've drunk up all of my money and stealed up all of my corn. I'll go up some dark hollow and put up my moonshine still. See, I'll make you 1 gallon for a $5 bill. I'll go up some dark hollow and get you some booze. See if the revenues don't get me no money, will I lose?
Well, that was the hardest times in the whole country at that time. People were starving to death, and that's when they started going west, you know, out of Texas and Oklahoma and going to California, the Okies and the Yarkies. But Pound was living. They was living off that moonshine, and everybody else starving to death. It was just a way of life, that was all. When I first went to the Pound, I boarded at Orville Mullins'. I was 13 years old when I first went to high school, and I started racking pool after school. And when I first racked pools in these other places, I didn't have to fool with the moonshine, but it gradually worked into where I was selling somebody a pint for them every once in a while. Wasn't my job, but and then they got rough around them pool rooms. There got to be a lot of fights. And one night, Clarence Wright and somebody was gambling, and they was arguing over a pool. And I butted in where I didn't have any business, you know, and the man was going to knock me in the head with a cue stick. And Clarence Wright pulled his pistol. He said, "You just touch him and I'll kill you." Well, I got to thinking, boy, it's going to be rough around these places. So I bought me a gun. At that time, that was about the only job I could get. I had to make it illegally some way. Well, I didn't have to. To start with, I could have just stuck to the cooking and nothing else. But everybody expected you to do something else. So it was hard to just stay in something there where it was legal. Just like me selling for that fellow then, yeah, and when I got caught. The place is built right on the river bank, and they kept the stuff outside up over the eaves. And he caught me with one of them. The sheriff did. So I took the cork out of it and threw it. And I thought it'd go in the river, but it didn't. It stuck down in the sand. He went down and got it. So
wash up your face, boys, come up your head. Now get ready for your coffee and bread. Hard times in the Wild County Jail, it's hard times, I know.
they called my case, and I took me an extra pair of pants, overalls or something to stay in jail with for 30 or 60 days, I guess. Judge said, well, are you guilty? And I said, yes, I'm guilty. And said, did you sell that liquor? And I said, sure, I sold it. Said, how much did you sell? I said, well, I got so every time he was gone, I was selling it for him. Old judge kind of smiled, and he said, I'll tell you what, let's let this boy go home. I believe he's told us the truth about it. So they just sent me back home. We started the Historical Society at Pound, and at the first meeting, I wanted to tell about the Pound in the old bootleg days, and nobody seemed to be interested. They didn't want to hear about that. I saw that the history there would be lost if we didn't do something about it. So after a while, I decided, well, I'll write it down anyway. Start off what I know about it, telling about all the bootleg joints and everything in the Pound. In last year in high school, I was flunking out on English, and I couldn't get along with my English teacher, so I quit, joined the Army. I had signed up to go to Panama. I wanted to go out of the country somewhere. I didn't care where. That was about the only opening. And the infantry was the worst part of the Army there is. And I took that too. I never was issued a rifle down there, but one day said the captain wanted me to come over to the office. He said, how old are you? I said I was 21 when I signed up. I'd already wrote to my mother and told her to get me out of there, and I was hoping something like that had happened. And I knew what he was talking about. And he said, no, you was 18. Said, you want to go home? And I said, no, I don't want to go home. He said, by God, you're going home anyway, whether you want to or not. That's the way he said it. Oh, I could have laughed, you know, but I didn't dare. So I come back and went into the bootleg joints again then. Anyway, that summer I must have made me some liquor. Well, so I bought me a car and started back in school that fall. Was going to finish. But we had fun with that old car I had. If you can't tell the dirty part about history, you've eliminated a lot of it. So that's why I wrote the book. And then when I could see when I wrote that, after I lost my eyesight, the lady from the blind organization, she talked me into writing more. And in them bootleg joints. Oh, they had got to be so many by then. They had opened that road up from Jenkins, blacktopped that road then in 1927. And that's when everything in Kentucky could come to the pound, no problem. Didn't have to come over that old rough road again. Then everybody put up a bootleg joint through the pound. I had counted over 20 from the top of the mountain to up on Indian Creek a little ways. All of them called themselves restaurants, you know. Bootlegging, and it got wild.
Me and my brother Jim went to a restaurant one night. Through some other parties we got into a fight. Shot all the way through me, they killed my brother Jim. Hard luck to place me on the spot.
They didn't take a lot off of anybody. They used to say that people from Kentucky had come over to the pound to see how mean they was, and they'd get killed before they got back. And most of the time it was Kentuckians killing Kentuckians. The people that run them places over there, they very seldom killed anybody. Everybody was making moonshine by that time, so I decided to make me some. So I got me a young partner, and we started making some. We finally got us a route, just like a bread route, hauling, making it and hauling it. We were making pretty good money out of it, and kept spreading out our territory a little all the time. My dad run a little store up there. He wasn't making any, but he knew everybody that did. And they would come from Harlan over here and get 2 or 3 cars that come together. And they was all armed when they come and go through Flat Gap, down that old road down through there. I've seen them take 100 gallons out at one time. And one of them told me, said, why don't you go down there and show us how to make liquor, and we'll be a partner, me and you won't have to haul it nowhere. And it worked out a while, but come find out there was the law and the outlaws combined. And we just made whiskey right in town, handled it anyway, no danger of being bothered. Then I decided that I was going to sell out. It was getting too dangerous around there for me. So I told them I was going back to the pound and start peddling home whiskey again. When I got back to the pound, Prohibition was gone. Legal whiskey was in, and Kentucky had beer license before the pound did. Everybody was going to Kentucky. They was closing them joints up just fast, one right after the other. There was no market for hauling whiskey anywhere. So there I was waiting. There was a Joyland, was the biggest restaurant down there. I'd worked off and on there. So I went back in there and was working some in there, more for my board than anything else, till I decided what I'd do. I had sold out over there and wanted what to do with my money. But then I was invited in on this deal to rob this family on Ball Camp. It was all planned. It had been planned for a long time, but I didn't know it. I was invited in the night that it happened. We were supposed to get $1,000 each, and it just didn't sound like much. And $1,000 in them days was a lot of money then. So, you know, they could have got a dozen people to have done what I did, but anyway, I fell for it. There's where I got in trouble. I was to be one of the first two to go through the door, and they knew every detail of everything. And I was to go to the back door and watch about the neighbors coming in. And they was to go in, and one of them knew exactly where the money was. It was in the trunk. They knew where the key was, that this man had the key in his pocket. The woman bit one man's finger, but she didn't know who it was or anything. But anyway, they got to looking for somebody with a broken finger the next day, and they found him. And they saw that he was stuck. Well, I heard about it, so I left. And I stopped at the house and told them I was in trouble. Told them where I was going. What could they do? There wasn't nothing. That's the only thing I've regretted my whole life was what I did to my father and mother. I've never done anything else to bother my conscience. I've been shot at and thought a time or two that I was going to have killed somebody, but I didn't. Come to this almost to that point where I was hemmed up.
No thunder sitting on top of a hill, said he ain't coming and never will. He's long gone, long gone.
I went back to Harlan, went back to the people over there. I thought, well, I'll be safe over there. I can start making whiskey again. Them people sell it. Whether anybody else does or not, they'll peddle it out right there in town. But I could see that sooner or later I was in more trouble. So that's when I decided to go to my uncle's in Missouri.
Now as through this world I ramble, I see lots of funny men. Some will rob you with a 6-gun, some with a fountain pen.
Then I could see what was happening. The law was down on everybody. They were putting an end to all of that. Bonnie and Clyde, they was looking for them, and all these outlaws at the same time. So I sent my gun back to my uncle. I said, I don't need that gun anymore because I would have no use for it. If they catch me, they're going to kill me just like the rest of them. And I said, I ain't got no use for the gun.
Going down the railroad track, and I'm not a-coming back, 'cause I'm 900 miles from my home. Lord, I hate to use that lonesome whistle blow.
There's a lot of difference in a bum and a worker. The bums don't want a job. And the workers, they held themselves up better. They stayed pretty clean, most of the workers did. When I started going to them bars a lot then, I got awful well acquainted around them bars. I ended up getting a job in one of them. I quit drinking. I wasn't drinking at all. In the other bars, you had to drink with them. And he knew I didn't drink. Casey, he'd come in, he'd talk a while, didn't say much of anything, and he'd pour him a drink and me a drink. He'd drink his, and then he'd talk a while, and then he'd drink mine. I'd even got a Social Security card, had everything going good, but one day there walked in Devil John Wright's youngest son, about my age. That just stunned me. First time I'd seen anybody in over 5 years. We never spoke to each other. I watched him walking down the street. That changed my whole life right there.
I believe I'll go back home. I believe I'll go back home. I believe I'll go back home, acknowledge I've done wrong.
Well, I wrote back to my aunt in Kentucky and told her to see my dad and see what he could work out with the compromise with the court out there on my case. My dad worked it out with them to give me the minimum sentence of 8 years. So I come in. Well, I felt better in that prison up there than I'd felt in years. I was on the chain gang, and I asked them to put me on the chain gang instead of in the building. I wanted to be out where I could see people. And I was as happy right in that on that chain gang as I had been for over 5 years now. Didn't bother me a bit. I knew I was going to be a free man then. About a year, somebody told me, he said, the governor sent in here for your record. And we sent it to him. Well, you know, then my hopes was built up. I wasn't sure that it would happen, but then one day they called me into the office and said, you've been granted a pardon. So I went home.
My ark of life was drifting down life's troubled sea of time. When first I saw your smiling face, youth was in its prime. I'll never forget wherever I roam, wherever you may be. If ever I have had a friend, you've been that friend to me.
I always just felt like that it was him coming of age, sort of. I mean, it could, all be tied in. I just thought about it as far as in terms of him. I just felt like it was just something that he, as they say, sow your wild oats and things like that. Just kind of came of age and something exciting.
His fortune used me as a child, and it loved me fondly too. And I would have had a broken heart had it not been for you. I'll never forget wherever I roam, wherever you may be. If ever I have had a
that friend to me.
Well, that just shows you what how a man can mess his life up awful easy that way. So then, afterwards, I lived what people would call a hard life after that, but it was a good life to me. I'd like to live it all over again. All the work I'd done after that, living right.
As I now look back across the past, across life's troubled sea, Lord, I smile to think mid all life's trials, been that friend to me. I'll never forget wherever I roam, wherever you may be. If ever I have had a friend, you've been that friend to me. Yes, you've been that friend